Jungkook's shocking decision to erase all traces of Jimin and Taehyung stunned fans. What triggered it is darker than anyone expected. "I told you not to speak about my mother again." Jungkook's voice cracked through the silence like glass shattering. The door slammed so hard it reverberated across the building. An old recording studio at the far end of HYB's private compound, where echoes carried more weight than words. Inside, Jimin stood frozen. His hand trembled mid-air, still reaching for the arm Jungkook had just yanked away. Taehyung sat motionless on the worn-out leather couch, eyes darting between them, lips parted, but no words would come. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. In the far corner, the blinking red light of a recording device still captured everything. A mistake. No one had turned it off. Jungkook's footsteps faded, one after another, until only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the pounding of blood in their ears remained. Then, in a movement that felt like betrayal in slow motion, Jimin turned to Taehyung. Not with anger, but with something more devastating, disbelief. "Why didn't you stop him?" he whispered, voice raw, eyes glassy. Taehyung didn't answer. He couldn't. His jaw clenched and he looked away. Earlier that morning, everything had been different. They had arrived to rehearse a new stage concept. Tensions were already building from weeks of passive silences, delayed responses, and one unsent birthday message. Still, none of them imagined it would unravel like this. 2 hours before the explosion, Jungkook had been seen alone in the hallway, scrolling through his phone with furrowed brows. His face was blank, unreadable, until he stopped and stared at something. A photo. A candid shot from 2018, back when all three of them used to laugh too loudly in the green room. Without hesitation, he tapped and deleted it. Then another, and another. A systematic erasure of a history that millions of fans had romanticized, screen captured, and archived. In the group chat, Taehyung had sent a single message. "Hyung, are you okay?" It was seen, but never answered. And now there was no going back. The confrontation began innocently, Jimin teasing Jungkook about an old interview clip where he had clumsily mentioned a childhood secret. The room had chuckled. Even Jungkook smiled at first. But when Jimin added, "Your mom must have spoiled you a lot back then," it was like something shifted behind Jungkook's eyes, something cold and unspoken. His hand tightened into a fist. "You don't know anything about her," he said slowly. It wasn't just about a joke. It was never about the joke. It was about months of simmering resentments, unresolved conversations, and hidden wounds that none of them had dared to speak about. And Jimin, who had always thought he knew Jungkook better than anyone, misread the moment. "I was just playing guk." But Jungkook wasn't playing. Not anymore. What followed was a storm of raised voices, confessions that were too sharp to be taken back, and a look on Taehyung's face that made it clear he had already picked a side, even if he hadn't spoken a word. "Is this why you've been avoiding us?" Jimin asked, his voice cracking, his composure fracturing like porcelain. "Because you think we've changed? Or because you have?" Jungkook didn't flinch. "I've changed because I had to. You two are still living in the past." That was when Jimin lunged, emotionally, not physically, and the sentence tumbled out before he could stop it. "You're scared of being left behind, Jungkook. But you're the one pushing everyone away." The silence that followed was absolute. And then Jungkook turned, walked to the door, and without looking back, muttered, "Then maybe it's better if I disappear from your memories first." The next day, ARMY woke up to a storm online. Jungkook's Instagram had been scrubbed clean of any photos containing Jimin and Taehyung. Old tweets were deleted. Edits vanished. Entire years disappeared in a matter of hours. Fans began speculating wildly. Some cried. Some blamed Jimin. Some blamed Taehyung. Others blamed the industry. But no one knew the truth. Back at the studio, Taehyung remained long after Jimin had left. He sat on that couch in silence, staring at the empty space where Jungkook had stood. There were things he could have said, should have said, but sometimes silence was safer than honesty. And outside, the rain had begun to fall, washing away footprints from the studio's concrete path. but the damage inside would take more than time to erase. You're not picking up his calls either, huh? Taehyung asked without turning around, his voice low, almost bitter, as he stared at the rain sliding down the practice room window. Jimin didn't answer. The silence between them was not empty. It was loaded. It throbbed like an old scar reopened too soon. The practice room, once their sanctuary, now felt like a confession chamber with no absolution. Taehyung finally turned, his jaw tight. You're just going to pretend none of this is your fault? Jimin looked up from his phone slowly, eyes reddened but not from crying. They were dry, raw, as if even tears had given up. My fault? You think I started this? Taehyung's mouth twitched into a bitter half-smile. You lit the fuse, Jimin. You always think you're the only one who gets to say what's right. What's just a joke? Jimin stood, chair scraping hard against the floor. You think that was a joke to me? You think I wanted to hurt him? Don't talk to me like I'm some manipulative. You are. Taehyung cut in, sharp as broken glass. You've always known exactly where to press. And this time you pressed too hard. I was trying to make him laugh. You humiliated him. Those 4 words struck like a whip. The wind howled outside, as if even Seoul itself was bracing for what was unraveling inside that dim-lit studio. Jimin laughed, but it was hollow, right? Because suddenly you're his protector? Where were you when he cried in that dressing room last month after the award show? Who found him drunk and face down on the balcony? I did. Not you. Taehyung's face shifted, guilt breaking through his usual calm. But he didn't let it last. You're not the only one who loves him. Then act like it, Jimin snapped. Because right now, it looks like you're just happy he turned on me instead of you. Taehyung's expression twisted. You think this is about sides? It always is, Jimin said, softer now. With us, it always has been. A moment passed, then another. Neither moved. Then Taehyung said something that made Jimin's heart still. He's deleting more than photos, Jimin. He's cutting ties. With both of us. Jimin's breath hitched. I went to his apartment. Taehyung continued, voice quieter. Last night. Lights off. No answer. Doorbell disconnected. I think he moved out. What? Jimin said, his voice barely audible. He wouldn't just. He would. You know he would. Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, it felt like time was rewinding. Back to those early dorm days when 3 boys laughed on the floor with cheap takeout and no filters. When silence meant peace, not punishment. Now silence was exile. Jimin sat down again, his movements mechanical. He said something before he left. Taehyung waited. He said, You don't know anything about her. Jimin looked down at his hands. I thought he was talking about his mom, but I feel like it was more than that. Taehyung's voice was measured. You hit a nerve that's deeper than either of us understand. Jimin looked up. Do you know what it is? Taehyung hesitated. Then softly, I think he blames us for something we didn't know we did. Across the city, Jungkook stood in front of a wall lined with old photo frames. He was in an unfamiliar space, an old apartment he had rented under a different name, high enough to see the Han River snaking in the distance. On the floor behind him were boxes labeled in black ink. Debut era, memories, young moments, V-Live prints. All emptied. He stared at the last remaining photo. The 3 of them in Japan, arms around each other, drenched in sweat, eyes squinting in the sun. It was the day they had fought over who should sleep on the floor because the hotel room was too small. They ended up piling into one bed. Jungkook tore it down. Then his phone rang. Private number. He ignored it. Then it rang again. And again. On the 4th time he picked it up, jaw clenched. What? Jungkook, came the voice. Not Jimin. Not Taehyung. Not even Bang Si-hyuk. It was Namjoon. Can we talk? I don't want to. It's not about you. It's about them. Silence. Then Jungkook said quietly, Then it is about me. Namjoon sighed. You need to come to the studio. There's something I need you to hear. Back at HYBE, a small team of executives gathered in a room thick with tension. We have a serious problem, said Director Lee, holding a printout of screenshots. Tweets from ARMY around the world. Conspiracy theories. Fan wars. Hashtag protect Jimin. Hashtag where is Jungkook. Hashtag Taehyung knows. The fandom was eating itself alive. One staffer looked up. We have to release a statement. No, said Bang Si-hyuk, stepping into the room. Not until I speak to them first. Sir, this is escalating. I know. He looked exhausted. Privately, Bang had known for months that something was wrong. The dynamic between the three had shifted subtly but definitively after a trip to Busan in the fall. A trip where something happened that no one had documented. Something not even their managers had been fully aware of. And now it was bleeding out into the world. He pulled out his phone and sent a message. All three of you. Studio A midnight. Non-negotiable. Then he looked at the empty glass of water beside him and whispered, let's hope there's something left to save. Studio A had never felt so cold. Jungkook arrived first. He stepped inside without a sound, dressed in black from head to toe. No jewelry, no brand flash, nothing that might distract from the storm written across his face. The room was dim, lit only by the narrow slats of light from the glass wall facing the corridor. A piano sat untouched in the corner. The walls, lined with acoustic panels, had absorbed every confession, every scream, every verse they had ever recorded. Now it would have to absorb whatever this was. 15 minutes later, Taehyung walked in. His hair was damp from the rain, and his coat hung heavy on his shoulders. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 nights. His eyes found Jungkook's instantly, but Jungkook didn't move, didn't blink. They didn't speak. The sound of a door opening broke the air again. Jimin stepped in last. No umbrella. His clothes clung to him, soaked through. He looked like someone who had run through a storm without caring what waited at the end. He looked at neither of them, just closed the door behind him and stood still. No one said a word for almost a full minute. Then Jungkook turned, his voice sharp. So who dragged us into this room like we're children? Taehyung's voice was measured. Bang PD Nim. Jimin finally looked up. He's not coming. He just wanted us to fix it ourselves. Jungkook scoffed. Fix what? Whatever this is, it's beyond fixing. Taehyung stepped forward, pulling the damp scarf from his neck. We don't have a choice. You think this is just about you and your Instagram? Jungkook, you set fire to a house we all live in. You should have moved out a long time ago then. Jungkook snapped. Stop it, Jimin said, voice sharp. Jungkook looked at him, jaw clenching. Say what you want to say, Jimin demanded. You've deleted the pictures. You've cut me out, but you haven't said it. Say what you really feel. Jungkook took a breath, then another, and then finally, you betrayed me. Jimin flinched. You both did, Jungkook said, looking now at Taehyung. You knew what that conversation meant to me. You knew what I said in confidence. And you used it in front of the staff, in front of everyone. Like a joke. Taehyung shook his head. No, it wasn't like that. Yes, it was. Jungkook's voice echoed, raw and rising. You took something sacred and made it performative. You made me performative. Just like everyone else in this damn company. Jimin stepped forward. Jungkook, listen to me. Don't you dare speak for me again. The room went still. I spent years trusting you, defending you, even when you talked over me, even when you made decisions for the group that none of us agreed to but we followed because it was you. Jimin's voice cracked. I didn't know you felt this way. That's the problem. You never asked. Taehyung sat down on the couch, staring at the floor. What happened in Busan, Jungkook? Jungkook blinked. You want to go there? We need to, Taehyung said. Jungkook's hands were fists at his sides. Jimin looked between them, confused. What happened in Busan? Jungkook laughed, but there was no humor. Tell him, Tae. Taehyung looked up, eyes filled with something unspoken. He saw something he wasn't supposed to. Stop playing games, Jimin snapped. Saw what? I saw the contract, Jungkook said finally. The one you two signed behind my back. The one that made you co-writers on a track I composed alone. The one Bang PD approved after you convinced him I'd be fine with it. Jimin's mouth opened. No words came. I found it on Bang PD's desk, and I realized you weren't brothers anymore. You were businessmen. It wasn't like that, Taehyung said quickly. We were told it would help the royalties be shared more equally. We didn't want to exclude you. You did exclude me, Jungkook said, voice trembling now. You made a decision about something I made. Something from my heart. And then you joked about my mother like none of it mattered. Jimin stepped back, as if struck. I didn't know about the contract details, Jimin said, softer now. Taehyung handled it. I just signed what the manager gave me. That's not an excuse, Jungkook snapped. You're not a child. You don't just sign your name without reading. And if you had read it, you would have known it erased me from my own work. Taehyung stood. We can fix it. We'll reverse it. I'll talk to Bang PD. No, Jungkook said. I've already talked to a lawyer. Jimin's breath caught. You're suing. Jungkook looked at them both, for the first time with a terrifying clarity. I'm reclaiming what was mine. The word mine sat heavy in the air. Taehyung ran a hand through his hair. You're blowing this up. You're letting your pride turn this into a war. It was a war the moment you stopped being honest, Jungkook said. Jimin sat down, defeated. You're really going to break everything we've built because of this? Jungkook's expression softened, only slightly. You think this is about music? About credits? It's about trust. I can't share a stage with people who look me in the eye and lie, who laugh at my pain and call it banter, who hold secrets behind contracts and expect me to smile through it. There was nothing left to say. Only breath. Only silence. Then the studio door opened again. Bang Si-hyuk stood there, unreadable. He looked at each of them, eyes calculating, burdened, tired. You boys just broke Army's heart, he said quietly. Now figure out whether it was worth it. He walked away, and the three were alone again. No longer idols, no longer brothers, just three fractured pieces of something that once felt unbreakable. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in the city, a million fans refreshed their feeds, searching for answers in silence. Taehyung was the first to break the silence after Bang Si-hyuk's words echoed through the studio like a sentence passed down by a judge. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was something worse, resigned. You know I didn't mean for it to happen like this, he said quietly. But maybe this isn't just about us. Jimin stood, slowly, like his knees had aged 20 years in the last half hour. His fingers were still trembling, eyes unfocused. What does that mean? Taehyung didn't answer right away. He looked at Jungkook instead, like he was searching for the boy they once lived with, trained beside, suffered with. But the boy was gone, and the man standing before him now had no intention of softening his glare. I think we've all changed, Taehyung said. But we pretended we hadn't, for the sake of fans, for the brand, for Bang PD, for survival. Jimin laughed, but it came out cracked and uneven. So now we're victims of our own success? Jungkook stared out the window. No, just victims of each other. And then the air broke. I should have told you about the contract, Taehyung said. I should have sat down with you and explained everything. I knew it would hurt you, but part of me was angry at you too. Jungkook turned slowly. For what? For always getting the spotlight, Taehyung admitted, eyes lowering. For always being the favorite, the center, the untouchable one, even when you didn't ask for it. That wasn't my fault. I know, Taehyung said, but I resented you anyway. Jungkook took a step forward. So instead of talking to me, you sabotaged me? Taehyung looked him dead in the eye. I didn't sabotage you. I betrayed your trust, yes. But don't pretend like you've never shut us out either. You stopped talking to us about anything real the moment your father fell ill. You shut down. You buried it. And we waited for you to come back. But you didn't. Jungkook froze. Jimin whispered. Your dad? Jungkook, why didn't you tell us? Because I knew what would happen, Jungkook said. his voice like ice scraping glass. You'd hug me, say the right things, post a caption, then move on. Just like always. We're not like that, Jimin said. You are, Jungkook replied. You've become that. Or maybe you always were and I was too blind to see it. A sharp inhale escaped Jimin. I sat beside my father's hospital bed while fans trended Jungkook forever, and screamed when you touched my shoulder on stage. Jungkook continued, every word a dagger. And you were in the next room planning that Busan deal like nothing had changed. Jimin's hand went to his mouth. We didn't know. You didn't ask, Jungkook repeated. Taehyung turned to Jimin. Did you really not know? I didn't, Jimin said, stunned. God. I swear to you I didn't. Then maybe you should have been looking at your best friend instead of a fan service script. Jimin took a step toward Jungkook, desperate. What do you want me to do? Beg? Cry? Burn the contract? I'll do it. I'll do anything. I don't want your guilt, Jungkook said coldly. I want your silence. Jimin staggered back like he'd been slapped. Taehyung exhaled and sat down again, like the weight of the truth had finally crushed his ability to fight. So this is it then? I think it was over before we stepped into this room, Jungkook said. I hate that it ended like this, Taehyung murmured. Jungkook didn't respond. He looked at the wall clock. It was past 1 in the morning. Jimin collapsed onto the studio couch, burying his face in his hands. We were supposed to grow old together. Taehyung closed his eyes. We still can. Just not like this. Jungkook picked up his jacket, slung it over his shoulder, and walked to the door. Taehyung didn't look at him, but he said one thing before Jungkook could leave. You're going to wake up one day and realize you miss us. Jungkook paused. Then he said without turning around, I miss who we were, not who we are now. The door shut behind him. Jimin stayed frozen on the couch. His chest heaved, but still no tears came. Only a broken numbness. Taehyung leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the floor like it held a code to reverse everything. After what felt like forever, Jimin whispered, He hates me. No, Taehyung said. He's grieving. Grieving what? Us, Taehyung said. The version of us that only exists in photos he just deleted. Jimin looked up at the piano. The first song Jungkook ever wrote for them had been played on that bench. He could still remember the melody. Taehyung stood and walked to the instrument. He sat down and began to play the first notes of that song. His fingers were hesitant, clumsy, but the memory remained. Jimin listened in silence. And far away, in a dark apartment by the river, Jungkook stared at the blank screen of his phone. His wallpaper had changed. No more group photos. No more memories. Just black. He turned it off and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, but inside nothing had dried. The room was red. Not literally. The walls were still gray. The lights still dimmed. The same faint hum from the air ducts still present. But to Jungkook, the entire world had turned red, blood red. His thoughts burned as he stared at the legal folder on his lap, heart pounding in his ears like a war drum. He'd left the studio hours ago, but sleep hadn't touched him. Instead, he sat in his new apartment, where the furniture was still half-assembled and cardboard boxes whispered of a life in transition. Outside, the skyline of Seoul gleamed like a promise he didn't believe anymore. He had always thought success would feel different, fuller, cleaner, but all he felt was rot. Inside the folder was a letter, one that no one else knew about. Not Jimin, not Taehyung, not Bang PD, not even the other members. A document he'd kept buried since January. It was from his father's attorney. A letter his dad had written before he passed away quietly 3 months ago, just before they'd filmed their last group commercial together. He hadn't told anyone, not even the fans, though they'd wondered why he looked so drained that week. In the letter, his father had written, Don't let them take your voice, son. You were born to sing, not to be silenced in gold-plated cages. Jungkook ran his thumb along the edge of the paper, eyes welling but not spilling. He couldn't afford to cry. Not now. Not when everything was finally falling apart in a way that felt honest. because pretending had nearly killed him. His phone buzzed. It was Hoseok. A single message. You need to stop before this destroys more than it fixes. He didn't respond. Instead, he stood up, walked to the mirror above the sink, and stared at himself. The same tattoos, same jawline, same hair falling over his eyes. But something behind those eyes had gone. Burned out. Replaced. He whispered to his reflection, "They made their choice." And for the first time, he believed it. Meanwhile, across the city, Jimin was spiraling. He had tried everything, calling Namjoon, texting Jean, even visiting the dorm where they used to rehearse during their trainee days. But the silence followed him like a ghost. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. All he could hear were Jungkook's words. "I want your silence." The rejection had sliced deeper than anything he'd ever faced on a stage, in an interview, in front of millions. Because it was private. It was personal. And it meant that the one person who used to see through him no longer even wanted to look. He knocked on Taehyung's door at 2:42 a.m. When the door opened, Taehyung didn't speak. His eyes were swollen. He had clearly been crying too. Jimin entered without asking. They sat on the floor like they had at 17. Only this time there was no laughter. Just the sound of a heart breaking slowly between two people who could no longer reach the third. "I think we've lost him," Jimin said after a long silence. Taehyung didn't answer right away. Then he asked, "If you could take it all back, would you?" Jimin nodded without hesitation. "Yes. Even if it meant losing the fame, the money, the legend." "I never wanted the legend," Jimin said. "I wanted us." Taehyung swallowed hard. "I read the contract again. It was worse than I thought." Jimin looked at him. "It didn't just shift royalties," Taehyung continued. "It rewrote history. It credited you and me as creative originators of something Jungkook composed alone. Lyrics, melody, harmony. His dad heard that song before he died. It was meant to be his goodbye. And we turned it into a group PR tool." Jimin pressed his palms against his eyes, shaking. "I didn't know. God, Tae. I didn't know. But we should've." Taehyung's voice trembled. "Why did we let it get this far?" he whispered. "When did we stop protecting each other?" Jimin answered with a question that stabbed through the dark. "Do you think he'll ever forgive us?" Taehyung looked toward the window. "I think forgiveness isn't the question anymore," he said. "The real question is whether we deserve it." Meanwhile, in a private conference room at HYBE, Bang Si-hyuk paced the floor, reading fan messages, angry emails, and panicked reports from their international partners. The backlash had begun. Fans noticed the deleted photos. They picked up on the tension. Clips were being dissected online. Eye rolls during interviews, clipped responses in live streams, lack of interaction. Theories were flooding in. One stood out. A voice recording, allegedly from an anonymous staff member, had leaked onto Twitter. He screamed at them, said they were vultures feeding off his grief, said he wished he'd never debuted with them. Bang Si-hyuk shut the screen. He muttered under his breath, "We need control. Now." Then he made the call. "Schedule a press appearance. Full group. Mandatory." "But sir," the assistant stammered, "Jungkook hasn't agreed to any." "Make it happen." The call ended. And across the city, 3 boys who had once called each other family were being summoned into the spotlight again. Not to sing, not to dance, but to pretend. The only thing more painful than betrayal was having to smile through it. Jungkook didn't attend the press briefing. Instead, he stood on the rooftop of the building across the street from HYB's main tower, wearing a hoodie and a mask. The wind whipped around him, tugging at the hem of his sweatshirt, as fans screamed below, completely unaware he was watching from the shadows. They were lining the street like it was a holiday. Camera crews were setting up. Banners, placards, light sticks. Some were crying. Others held signs that read, "Jungkook forever," and "TKOK. Don't break US." The sound of their loyalty tore into his chest like a knife. Jimin and Taehyung would be inside by now, preparing to walk into the press room and stand in front of the world as if they weren't all bleeding internally. He lit a cigarette, something he hadn't done in over a year, and leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the building where his old life waited to be reanimated like a dead puppet. His phone buzzed again. It was Namjoon this time. The message was short. If you walk away from this now, you'll regret it in 10 years. Maybe sooner. He stared at the words for a long moment, then deleted the message without replying. Downstairs, in the green room behind the press stage, Jimin was hyperventilating. He had done world tours, faced global media, performed with jet lag and for fluids running through his veins. But nothing had prepared him for the feeling of standing alone in the dressing room mirror, trying to fasten a collar over a throat that felt like it was closing. He buttoned the shirt with shaking fingers. The staffer knocked once before entering. "Your live in 12 minutes. Jimin nodded without turning. Across the hallway, Taehyung was seated in silence, staring at the floor, legs crossed, arms folded. He hadn't spoken a word since arriving. Not to the manager, not to the stylist, not to the assistant who'd handed him the talking points. His silence scared the staff more than any outburst could have. Jimin entered his room without knocking. Their eyes met. "You okay?" Jimin asked, knowing it was a stupid question. Taehyung looked at him. "No. Same." They stood there, two of Korea's most beloved idols, stripped of everything but fear and guilt. "I don't think he's coming," Taehyung said. "I know," Jimin replied. "I think he's watching, though." "Let him," Taehyung said. "Let him see what's left." 5 minutes later, the two of them stood side by side behind the curtain. The moderator stepped onto the stage, welcomed the press, and introduced them. The curtain opened. Dozens of cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. Fans watching from live streams across the world held their breath. Jimin stepped to the mic first. "Thank you for being here. We understand there's been a lot of confusion." Taehyung cleared his throat, voice even. "We want to speak honestly, not as idols but as people, as friends, or former friends." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jimin looked down at his notes, then discarded them. "There's been tension in the group, and it's not just rumors. It's real. And it started with a mistake, one we made. We took something personal, something sacred to Jungkook, and we made decisions behind his back." A camera lens clicked loudly. "We didn't mean to betray him," Taehyung added. "But we did. We lost his trust. And for that, we are deeply sorry." A hand shot up in the second row. A reporter from a Western outlet. "Does this mean BTS is breaking up?" Taehyung stared at the reporter. Jimin's lips parted. The room went still. Another reporter asked, "Where's Jungkook now?" Taehyung answered, "He's where he needs to be, and we respect that. But does he still consider himself part of BTS?" That question hit like a gunshot. Neither of them answered. The moderator ended the press conference early. As they walked off stage, Taehyung's voice was quiet. "Do you think he watched that?" Jimin didn't answer. But he didn't need to. Across the street, Jungkook crushed the cigarette under his boot and turned away from the window. Later that night, an anonymous post went up on Weverse. It had no name, no photo, just text. "Sometimes, the people you die for are the ones who kill you slowly." Fans exploded. Some were sure it was Jungkook. Some said it was fake. But deep down the world knew. And somewhere in the city, as neon signs blinked against black rain-slick streets, 3 boys lay awake in 3 different beds, in 3 different rooms, remembering the same song they once wrote together. Now just another memory they couldn't post. The message stayed pinned for hours. "Sometimes, the people you die for are the ones who kill you slowly." Thousands of armies tried to interpret its meaning. Theories erupted across Twitter, Weverse, and Discord. Was it about Jimin? About Taehyung? About the contract? Was Jungkook walking away for good? HYB refused to comment. But by the time the sun rose, the silence was louder than any confirmation. Inside a hotel suite not far from Gangnam, Taehyung sat on the floor with his back against the wall, staring at the door like it might open and fix everything. His phone lay beside him, untouched. The screen cracked from where he'd thrown it hours earlier. The press conference hadn't done what they hoped. If anything, it had only thrown more gasoline on a fire already burning out of control. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. His mind was stuck on a loop. Jungkook's face in the studio, the tremble in Jimin's voice, the way they had once sworn under their breath backstage. No matter what happens, we stick together. And now they were scattering like ashes. Taehyung had never cried easily. But that night, something inside him buckled. Not in loud sobs or screams. Just the quiet surrender of a man who had lost a brother and knew it might be permanent. Across the city, Jimin sat in his mother's kitchen. His hands wrapped around a mug of untouched tea, eyes red, face hollow. His mother, who had watched every performance, every award, every live broadcast with pride, now watched her son fall apart without knowing how to reach him. "You can fix this," she whispered. Jimin shook his head. "You don't know what I said, what I did." "Then tell me." He tried. He opened his mouth. But the words refused to leave. Because how do you confess that you destroyed someone's trust not by accident, but through ignorance, pride, and ego? He stood up. "I need air." Outside, the sky was bruised with clouds. He walked without direction, without destination. His hoodie pulled low, mask tight. But his mind was still echoing with one voice. "Don't speak for me again." He didn't notice the car pulling up beside him. Not until the window rolled down and Namjoon's voice called out, "Get in." Jimin hesitated. Namjoon looked at him hard. "Now." He obeyed. Inside the car, silence stretched for a full minute before Namjoon spoke. "You think you're the victim." Jimin flinched. "I don't." "You do," Namjoon said. "But you're not. You're part of the damage." "I never meant." "It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did. And what you didn't do." Jimin's voice dropped. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm tired of watching you both drown while pretending you're still floating." Jimin stared out the window. "It's too late, Hyung." "No, it's not," Namjoon said. "But you have to stop waiting for him to come to you. He won't even read my texts. Then write something he'll read." Jimin looked confused. Namjoon reached into the glove box and pulled out a worn notebook. He placed it in Jimin's lap. "He wrote songs in that during our trainee days. Before debut. Before the fame. He used to trust this paper more than he trusted us." Jimin traced the cover with trembling fingers. "Why do you have it?" "Because he gave it to me," Namjoon said. "The night his father died." Jimin's breath caught. Namjoon continued. "He said, 'Don't let them rewrite me.' And I didn't understand what he meant until now." The car pulled over near the Han River. Jimin stepped out, notebook in hand. And for the first time in days, he allowed himself to remember not the version of Jungkook the world adored, but the quiet, strange boy who once slept curled up on the studio floor with ink on his fingers and a dream too big for his chest. Meanwhile, Jungkook sat alone at a private recording booth, an underground studio he used when he couldn't breathe at HYB. The walls were dark blue, the lighting soft, a single mic, no staff, no cameras, just him. He stared at the screen in front of him. Track title, Unspoken. He pressed record and began to speak. "I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I couldn't recognize them anymore. Because somewhere along the way, they stopped seeing me. And I stopped letting them." He inhaled. "I don't want revenge. I don't want fame. I want peace. And I can't find it in a group chat filled with unread truths." His voice broke on the next sentence. "My father's last words weren't about legacy or success. They were about love. And I can't keep giving mine to people who hold it like a contract." He ended the recording, saved it, but didn't post it. Not yet. He just stared at the waveform pulsing on the screen. Proof that he still had a voice, even if no one deserved to hear it. For now, the sound of the river was faint beneath the city's roar, but Jimin could hear it. Steady, endless, like the voice of something ancient trying to remind him what mattered. He sat on the stone embankment with the notebook open across his knees. It felt like holding someone else's memory in his hands. The pages were raw, covered in Jungkook's handwriting. Slanted, hurried, emotional. There were fragments of lyrics never used, thoughts crossed out in ink, angry rants, love letters never sent. One line appeared again and again between the chaos. Don't forget who you were before the lights. Jimin closed his eyes. He remembered that boy, the one who once skipped meals so he could pay for studio time, the one who cried after every failed vocal take, the one who whispered Hyung like it meant safety, not hierarchy. He'd loved Jungkook like a brother. He still did. But now that love was buried under layers of betrayal, silence, and misunderstood intentions, he had to make it right. He stood, pulled out his phone, and hit record.
No filters. No stylists.
No background music. Just him and the truth. He spoke to the camera in a trembling voice. I don't know how to fix this, but I know I broke something sacred. Not just between us, but inside you. And I'm sorry. For the things I said. For the things I didn't. For the part of you I never tried to understand. I don't care if the world sees this. I only care if you do. He ended the video and posted it without looking back. 20 minutes later, Jungkook's phone buzzed. He saw the notification, paused, then clicked. The screen filled with Jimin's face. His face.
No edits. No mask. No shield.
Just pain. And a confession. He watched the whole thing. Once, twice. He set the phone down and cried. Not because it changed anything, but because it reminded him that maybe, just maybe, he hadn't imagined it all. Love, brotherhood, devotion. It had been real, and now it was bleeding out publicly for millions to witness. But even the truth, raw and bleeding, couldn't undo what had already been done. Later that night he called Taehyung. The phone rang 5 times. Then a voice answered. I didn't think you'd ever call. Jungkook didn't speak right away. Then, finally, I watched his video. And I believe him. Taehyung exhaled. But I'm still leaving. Taehyung went still. What? I need time, Jungkook said. And space. Not just from you or Jimin. From all of it. From the system. From the noise. From everything that turned us into something we never wanted to be. Taehyung sat down on his bed, legs weak. Does this mean? I'm not saying goodbye, Jungkook said. Just not yet. Not until I remember what it means to want to come back. Taehyung wiped at his face. You don't owe anyone anything. But I hope, when you're ready, you'll come back home. I don't know where that is anymore. Then we'll build a new one. The call ended. And for the first time in weeks, Jungkook slept. Elsewhere, Bang Si-hyuk sat in his office, reviewing the numbers. Jimin's video had gone viral. Public sympathy was swinging back. Army was divided, yes, but engagement was sky high. Sales were spiking. Media was circling. He closed the laptop and leaned back. None of this had been planned. Not the fallout. Not the silence. Not the heartbreak. But part of him knew with brutal, pragmatic clarity, that this pain would become part of the legacy. The redemption arc. The raw truth. The brand built on honesty even when it tore them apart. He picked up the phone and made one final call for the night. Namjoon, we need to talk. About what comes next. And far away, in 3 different corners of the same broken circle, Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung each lay awake, eyes open in the dark, wondering if forgiveness would ever feel real. The walls of the meeting room were made of glass. From the outside, it looked like just another corporate strategy session. A manager tapping through PowerPoint slides. A team of legal advisors checking contracts. But inside, the tension was nuclear. Bang Si-hyuk sat at the head of the long table, his fingers steepled under his chin, eyes locked on the 2 men across from him. Jimin, Taehyung.
No stylists. No cameras.
No protection. Just raw silence. Finally, Bang spoke. Where is he? Jimin's voice was hollow. He said he needed space. Bang nodded once, slowly. He's not answering my calls. He won't, Taehyung said. Bang exhaled, the weight of an empire cracking his composure. This isn't about music anymore. It's about stability. If Jungkook goes public, if he posts anything that even hints at contractual abuse or misrepresentation or emotional coercion, we don't just lose fans. We lose investors, partnerships, global trust. Jimin looked down at his lap. Bang leaned forward. So I need to ask you a very uncomfortable question. Has he said anything about releasing statements? Files? Screenshots? Neither of them answered. The silence was answer enough. Bang sat back. Then you'd better stop him. Before I have to. Taehyung's eyes darkened. You're threatening him? I'm protecting the group, Bang said.
No, Jimin whispered.
You're protecting the company. Bang's jaw tightened. Same thing. And in that moment the last illusion shattered. Bang Si-hyuk, the man they once believed was family, was just another executive with too much to lose and too many lawyers to feed. Outside, the sky darkened. Thunder rolled in from the east. Summer storms were fast and ruthless in Seoul. The city turned gray in a matter of minutes. Back at his studio bunker, Jungkook was already awake. He hadn't slept again. The message from Namjoon still blinked unread on his screen. He had written something new the night before. Not a song. Not a letter. A statement. A document detailing every moment of betrayal. Every contract line he hadn't signed. Every emotional outburst swept under the rug for the sake of optics. Every time he had been told to smile through it. He hadn't posted it yet, but he'd saved it and printed it. 10 pages. Single-spaced. It sat on the desk beside his laptop. His finger hovered over the send button until the knock came. A soft, deliberate knock. He stood, heart stuttering. When he opened the door, Taehyung stood there, soaked from the rain, breathing hard.
No umbrella.
No driver. Just him. They stared at each other. Then Taehyung spoke. I came alone. Jungkook said nothing, just stepped aside. Taehyung entered. He looked around the space. Sparse, silent, honest. I didn't tell Jimin, he said. I didn't tell anyone. I just needed to see you. Jungkook leaned against the wall. Why? Because I think we're both one wrong sentence away from destroying each other. Jungkook's voice was bitter. And what makes you think we haven't already? Taehyung took a breath. You're angry. I get it. You have every right. But I'm not here to beg. I'm not here to clean up Bang PD's mess. I'm here for one reason. He pulled a folded envelope from his coat and set it on the table. Jungkook stared at it. It's my termination clause, Taehyung said. If you want, I'll sign it. I'll walk away. I'll take the hit, the fine, the headlines, all of it. Because if that's what it takes to show you I never wanted to steal from you, I'll do it. Jungkook's throat closed. Why? He whispered. Because I miss you, Taehyung said. Not the stage. Not the fame. You. The silence in the room was deafening. Then Jungkook spoke. You left me when I needed you most. I was scared, Taehyung said. Of you. Of losing the group. Of facing what we'd become. I was drowning. I know. And you looked the other way. I know. The tears finally came. But not from Jungkook. From Taehyung. I don't want forgiveness, he said. I want truth. And if your truth is that you never want to see me again, I'll accept it. Jungkook sat down. He didn't touch the envelope. He didn't speak. But he didn't throw it away either. And for now that was enough. Taehyung's envelope remained on the table between them like a loaded weapon neither dared to reach for again. Jungkook's eyes were locked on it. But his mind was spinning far elsewhere. He was thinking about their first shared dorm. The late-night ramen. The fights over shampoo. The moments they screamed at each other and then laughed until dawn. The purest version of them that no longer existed. Taehyung had stopped crying, but his silence was heavier than tears. He waited, jaw tight, knowing he couldn't force Jungkook to say anything. Maybe he didn't even deserve a response. Finally, Jungkook leaned back in the chair and looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in what felt like forever. Why didn't you stop him? He asked. Taehyung blinked. Who? Bang Si-hyuk. Taehyung didn't answer right away. His voice dropped low. Because I thought I owed him everything. Because I was scared that if I didn't play by his rules, I'd lose all of this. You already lost it, Jungkook said. You just didn't notice until the floor disappeared. Taehyung swallowed. And now you're here, offering to quit like that fixes what we buried under a decade of silence. I'm not trying to fix it, Taehyung said. I'm trying to give you a choice. The kind I never gave you before. Jungkook stood up and walked to the far end of the studio. His hands were shaking. The walls felt like they were pressing in. He opened the small window, letting the air flood in with a sharp gust. The sound of traffic below was distant, but real, proof that the world kept turning, even as everything he knew was crumbling. Behind him, Taehyung whispered, "What did he say to you? Your father. In the hospital." Jungkook didn't turn around. He said he was proud, but not of the awards, or the shows. He said he was proud that I never let the world take my voice. Taehyung's voice cracked. And then we did. Jungkook finally turned. You did. Taehyung nodded, a bitter acceptance in his eyes. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Jimin stood in the frame, soaked, panting, eyes wild. Neither of them spoke. Not at first. Then Jungkook said, "You're late." "I saw your light," Jimin said. "I ran." Taehyung looked between them and slowly stood. "I'll give you to the room." "No," Jungkook said. "Stay." Jimin stepped into the space, dripping rain onto the floor, not caring. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "Then you should leave," Jungkook replied. "I came to say something I should have said a year ago, when your father got sick, when you started disappearing emotionally, when I noticed but didn't ask." The air inside the studio tightened. "I'm sorry," Jimin said. "Not just for the contract, or the joke, or the silence. I'm sorry for not being your friend when you needed one. I was so busy protecting what we'd built that I didn't realize it meant nothing without you." Jungkook's face didn't move. "You think saying that now will change anything?" Jimin stepped closer.
No.
"I just don't want to lie anymore. To you, to Army, to myself." Taehyung folded his arms. "So what do we do now?" Jimin looked at Jungkook. "We stop pretending. If this is the end of BTS as we knew it, then let's end it with the truth." Jungkook stared at him. "You want to go public?" "Yes," Jimin said. "No PR statement.
No sugarcoaté de paleji.
Just us. Talking.
No edits.
One take. Live." Taehyung raised his eyebrows. "You're serious?" "I am," Jimin said. "Because they deserve to hear from us. Not HYB. Not their theories. Us." Jungkook was quiet. Then he nodded. "Fine," he said. "But on one condition." "What?" "You don't look at the live chat. You don't let the numbers decide what you say. And you don't speak unless you mean every goddamn word." Jimin nodded. Taehyung did too. So they set up the phone. No camera crew.
No lighting.
Just the three of them, sitting on the floor of the studio that had once been their sacred space. Jimin held the phone in his palm, thumb hovering over the Go Live button. He looked at Jungkook, then at Taehyung. They nodded, and he pressed it. The screen flickered, and millions of fans around the world watched in real time as the three boys they loved finally stopped being perfect, and started being real. The notification went live within seconds. Red circle BTS. Unfiltered. Live now. The viewer count surged instantly. Hundreds of thousands. Then 1 million. Then more.
No makeup. No glam.
No staff lurking behind the camera. Just Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung. Sitting on a bare studio floor, cross-legged like they were teens again, with only a single standing mic between them. Jimin began.
No smile. No wave.
Just exhaustion. This isn't something our company approved. This isn't a statement written by lawyers. This is us, speaking for ourselves. For the first time in a long time, Taehyung glanced at Jungkook, who nodded slightly. Jimin's voice cracked as he continued. "We've hurt each other. We've lied. We've buried things. And we've let the machine around us decide what we share and what we suppress. Taehyung leaned forward. We've made mistakes. Personal ones. Professional ones. And we won't blame anyone else. But we're here now because if we let someone else shape our story again, we lose the last part of us that's real. Jungkook finally spoke. When I deleted those photos, I wasn't trying to make a statement. I was trying to make space. To breathe. Because for a while, it felt like even my grief wasn't mine anymore. The comments were exploding. Hearts, tears, confusion. Some fans begged them to stop. Others begged them to say more. Jimin looked directly at the screen. My father always told me the truth is like medicine. Bitter going down but necessary to heal. We hope you'll hear us out, even if it hurts. Taehyung's voice was steady. There was a contract, signed without all three of us agreeing. It took credit away from Jungkook for something deeply personal. We didn't mean to hurt him, but we did, and we let it sit in silence. Jungkook stared ahead, his voice sharper now. When my father passed, I was alone. Not physically, but emotionally. I asked for space and it was given. But I also needed presence. And I didn't get it. And that broke something in me I'm still trying to repair. Jimin looked down. We let that pain go unspoken. And then we used his words, his heart, in a way that benefited us. Taehyung added. And the company encouraged it. Because it sold. Jungkook shook his head. But I don't blame HYBE. Not completely. They're a business. We're the ones who said yes. Who smiled through it. They paused.
No script.
Just the weight of everything they'd never said. Then Jungkook took a deep breath. This isn't the end of BTS, he said. But it's the end of pretending we're okay when we're not. Jimin leaned closer to the mic. We might take time apart. We might disappear for a while. But know this, what we built wasn't fake. We meant it. Every lyric. Every tear. Every stage. Taehyung added. And if we come back, it will be as people first. Not products. Jungkook nodded. Then he said without hesitation, I forgive you. The world froze. Even Jimin seemed stunned. Taehyung's eyes shined. You do.
Jungkook repeated.
But that doesn't mean we go back to how things were. Forgiveness doesn't erase the damage. It just stops the bleeding. Jimin whispered, Thank you. They sat in silence. 1 million, 2 million, then 3. Armies around the world watched, some crying, some confused, some angry, but all listening. And for the first time, BTS wasn't just a band or a brand or a banner. They were broken. They were human. And they were finally telling the truth. Jungkook ended the live stream himself.
No goodbye. No bow.
Just one final sentence. Let us be real or let us be gone. The screen went black. But the world was still shaking. And nothing would be the same again. The silence after the stream was deafening. It wasn't just in the room. It was everywhere. Online, on the streets, in the dorms, in the staff elevators. Seoul felt like it was holding its breath. HYB's headquarters looked like a crime scene the morning after. A building filled with frozen screens, panicked managers, and unread Slack messages sitting like ticking time bombs. Inside the PR war room, a dozen screens played the live stream on loop, while department heads argued in hushed, desperate tones. No one dared speak too loudly. The CEO's office door remained closed. They knew the call was coming. And when it did, it wasn't a call, it was a storm. Bang Si-hyuk entered the room not with rage, but with something colder. Resolve. He didn't yell. He didn't throw things. He just said 6 words. Call the legal department. Now. All of them. The team scrambled. Within minutes, Jungkook's contract was on the table. Jimin's too. Taehyung's. Every clause highlighted. Every NDA underlined. Across the city, the members were still in the studio. They hadn't moved since the broadcast ended. The tension didn't leave just because the camera stopped rolling. No one had spoken in nearly 15 minutes. Jimin was the first to break the silence. I thought I'd feel better. Taehyung rubbed his eyes. You don't.
No.
I feel naked. Jungkook stared at the blank screen where the live chat had once flowed like a river of screaming, crying, begging. I feel like we just jumped off a cliff, he said, and we're waiting to see if we hit rocks or water. Taehyung sat back against the wall, legs stretched. We said what needed to be said. Jimin looked up, voice barely a whisper. But what if it was too late? Jungkook didn't answer. His phone buzzed. He looked down. A message from Bang Si-hyuk. You've crossed a line. Come to HQ. Immediately. He didn't show the message to the others. He just stood up. I need to go. Taehyung grabbed his arm. Don't go alone. Jungkook pulled free. I have to. This one's mine. And then he left. By the time Jungkook entered the top floor of HYB's headquarters, security was already waiting for him. Not to escort him out, but to make sure he didn't see what he wasn't supposed to. He was taken to a glass conference room. Bang was already there. So was HYB's legal team. They offered him water. He declined. Bang Si-hyuk looked at him with an expression that wasn't anger, but disappointment dressed in professionalism. You realize what you've done? Jungkook met his gaze. Yes. You've jeopardized millions in contracts. You've fractured the brand. You've made executives from 5 countries question whether they should keep backing BTS. I told the truth. You told your truth, Bang corrected. And now I have to clean it up. Jungkook folded his arms. I'm not your problem to manage anymore. Bang leaned forward. Everything you do affects us. Your name is tied to ours in every language. Then maybe it's time to untie it. The room froze. Bang narrowed his eyes. What are you saying? I want out, Jungkook said. Clean.
No lawsuits. No scandal.
Just let me go. Silence. Then laughter. Bang chuckled, not with humor, but with contempt. You think it's that easy? Jungkook didn't flinch. It has to be.
Bang stoop.
If you walk away now, I'll make sure every sponsor, every collaborator, every broadcast executive knows exactly who to blame. Do it, Jungkook said. But I'm not scared of your war anymore.
Bang stipek kalo.
Don't be stupid. Jungkook's eyes darkened. Don't mistake silence for weakness. I let you speak for me long enough. I'm speaking now. And he walked out. He didn't stop until he reached the elevator. His hands were shaking. But inside, something had settled. He had crossed the line. Burned the bridge. But for once, it felt like his fire, not someone else's. Meanwhile, Jimin and Taehyung were still in the studio, waiting. Neither spoke much. They didn't know what was coming next. Until a Weverse notification lit up their phones at the exact same second. Post. From Jungkook. Text only.
No hashtags.
No photo. Just this. I am not a product. I am not a storyline. I am a person. And I choose to live my life as one. The reaction was instant. Army forums exploded. Supporters praised his courage. Critics accused him of destroying BTS from within. Hashtags surged to trending. Hashtag Jungkook freedom. Hashtag let them heal. Hashtag HYB exposed. Hashtag this is not BTS. Some fans defended the company. Others demanded answers. But none of that mattered. Because in a quiet corner of Seoul, Jungkook sat on a bench by the river, hoodie up, staring at the water. For the first time in years, he wasn't scheduled to be anywhere. Wasn't told what to say. Wasn't anyone's golden magne. He was just Jeon Jungkook. And that was terrifying. And liberating. And it was only the beginning. The boardroom felt like a pressure cooker. 20 floors above Seoul's chaos, HYB's top executives circled like wolves, speaking in corporate dialect, damage control, brand equity, global restructuring. But the center of gravity had shifted. It no longer belonged to them. It belonged to one man sitting alone in the corner, unreadable, defiant. Jungkook. He had been summoned. Again. But this time he didn't flinch. The room buzzed with legal jargon, half-threats disguised as strategy. At the head of the table, Bang Si-hyuk said nothing for nearly 10 minutes. He just watched Jungkook, as if measuring how far he could be pushed. Then finally, you want out, he said, voice calm. But you've made that impossible. You didn't walk away. You detonated the building on your way out. I told the truth. You told your truth. Bang snapped. Now here's mine. BTS is bigger than you. Always has been. Always will be. Jungkook stood. No, he said. BTS was us. 7 boys. Dreams. Dust. Blood. We built this from nothing. And I won't let you rewrite that story because it's convenient. You think the public will stand with you forever? Bang asked. I don't care if they do, Jungkook said. I just care that I can finally breathe again. He walked out. Didn't wait for the elevator. Took the stairs. Each step felt like shedding armor. Down in the van, Jimin gripped the door handle. We have to do something. What? Taehyung asked. They already see us as traitors. Every word we say feels like a trap. We don't stay quiet. Taehyung looked at him. You're ready to go to war with HYBE? Jimin didn't hesitate. For him? Yes. And that was all it took. They stepped out of the van and walked toward the crowd. The moment the first fan spotted them, screams erupted. Cameras surged. People separated. And then, like a rupture from the earth itself, Jimin and Taehyung climbed the HYB stairs side by side, pushing through security like ghosts who had finally returned for the truth. When they reached the top, the door swung open, and Jungkook stood there, stunned. He opened his mouth, but Jimin hugged him before he could speak. A real hug, shaking, fierce, broken. Taehyung placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not alone, he said. Not anymore. And for the first time in weeks, Jungkook let himself believe it. The door to the top floor conference suite slammed open. Bang Si-hyuk was still standing by the window, watching the skyline like a general surveying his burning city. The executives at the table looked up, startled, as 3 figures walked in. Unannounced, uninvited, and unafraid. Jungkook, Jimin, Taehyung. For a moment no one moved. The silence was like gunpowder. Dense, ready to ignite. Bang turned, lips tightening. Ah, the prodigal sons. Jungkook stepped forward first. His voice was low but sharp. We're not here for ceremony. We're here because you don't get to finish this story without us. One of the legal advisors rose. You cannot simply walk into an active board. Sit down, Bang said. Let's see what they think they've come to say. Jimin looked at each face in the room, letting the tension stretch before he spoke. You've all built careers off our backs, off our pain, off our silence. You've told us for years that this is how the system works. But we're done playing by rules we never wrote. A woman in a blue blazer, one of HYB's international liaisons, tried to interject. There are contractual. Don't talk to us about contracts, Taehyung snapped. You rewrote them without honesty, without integrity. And now you want to pretend we're the ones who broke something. Bang folded his arms. You think this tantrum is a revolution? It's not. It's noise. Temporary. You'll vanish, and the machine will replace you. Jungkook took another step forward, close now. Then let it. But not before we expose what's underneath all the shine. One of the junior execs leaned over and whispered something urgently to Bang. He listened, then frowned. What did you say? Bang asked aloud. The executive swallowed. Sir, the live stream, when they went live last night, it wasn't just to ARMY. It was mirrored by 5 international outlets. It's been re-uploaded in 47 languages. It's everywhere. Bang's jaw clenched. Jimin added. And it's not going away. Another staffer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then turned white. Sir, 3 of our global sponsors just pulled their funding. And the board from the Tokyo division is demanding an emergency review of artist welfare policy. Taehyung looked at Bang. You feeling the heat now? The air turned acidic. Bang walked toward them, slow and composed, but his voice trembled with rage. You don't get to martyr yourselves now. You think this ends with applause? You'll be blacklisted, branded unstable, ungrateful. Every handshake will vanish. Jungkook met him with equal fire. Then we'll make our own doors. BTS is dead without me, Bang hissed. No, Jungkook said. BTS died the moment we were told to smile at our own funeral. And then he threw it down, a thick brown envelope sealed and signed. His formal withdrawal. Effective immediately. Taehyung followed. Then Jimin. Bang stared at the 3 envelopes like they were radioactive. You do this, he said quietly. And you walk out of this building with nothing. We walk out with our souls, Jungkook said. That's more than you'll ever understand. They turned and left.
No fanfare. No goodbye.
Just the sound of the empire cracking behind them. By the time they reached the elevator, the building was already buzzing. Phones ringing. Lawyers yelling. Headlines blaring from mounted screens. Army had already flooded social media. Clips from the confrontation were leaking in real time. An anonymous staff member had filmed part of the conversation and uploaded it. The footage went viral in 6 minutes. Jungkook stood between his brothers as the elevator doors closed. None of them spoke. The silence wasn't empty this time. It was full of something sacred. Freedom. When they reached the lobby, security moved to intercept them. But then something unexpected happened. The crowd outside parted. Armies, reporters, even some former staff. They moved aside and began to clap. First quietly, then louder. Applause. Not for an idol group, but for 3 men who had finally refused to be broken. Taehyung's eyes glistened. Jimin lowered his head. Jungkook didn't hide his tears. They walked through the crowd, heads high. And BTS, as the world once knew it, was gone. But what was born in its place was something raw, unfinished, and achingly real. The streets outside HYBE looked like a war zone made of cameras. By the time Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung reached the black van waiting at the curb, their departure had already become a global flashpoint. Headlines scrolled in dozens of languages across building screens. Helicopters hovered over the skyline like vultures. Fan chants mixed with protest chants. Some cried. Some yelled. The door shut behind them with a dull thud, sealing them inside a silence that wasn't peace. It was shock. No one spoke. Not for the first few minutes. Then Jimin finally exhaled. It's done. Jungkook leaned his head back against the seat.
No.
It's just beginning. Taehyung stared out the tinted window, watching the waves of people ripple against each other. We're going to be hated for this. Jimin turned to him. We already are. The van pulled away, and the 3 of them watched as the building that had once been home grew smaller in the rear window. It didn't feel like escape. It felt like betrayal in reverse, leaving the abuser, not the other way around. The van was headed toward an unknown destination. Not metaphorically, literally. They hadn't planned past walking out. There was no press strategy, no legal shelter, no protection. They were fugitives from their own legacy. Across Seoul, HYBE went into overdrive. A crisis media response was drafted within the hour. By noon, a statement was released denying mistreatment, framing the live stream as a miscommunication and emotional misunderstanding. By 2, they had already begun re-editing BTS's music pages, quietly moving songwriting credits, adjusting links, blurring connections. Fans noticed, and they weren't quiet. Army fractured in real time. Hashtag Protect Jungkook trended alongside hashtag BTS Forever and hashtag HYBE Truth Now. Longtime fans posted screenshots, receipts, timelines. Some unfollowed the company accounts entirely. Others begged for peace, urging unity. And somewhere deep inside an anonymous server, a small group of former HYBE staff began organizing under a new name, the Quiet 7. It started with a post, a simple thread titled, "You don't know half of it." The user claimed to be a former assistant producer for BTS. The post included unredacted schedules, emails between department heads, and audio of private meetings that confirmed pressure tactics, emotional blackmail, and ghostwriters. It went viral in 20 minutes. Army was no longer just watching. They were mobilizing. But while the world fought online, the 3 of them sat in a small apartment borrowed from a friend of Taehyung's, a jazz pianist who had toured in Europe for a decade. The place smelled like old vinyl and clove cigarettes. Felt safe. But nothing inside them was. Taehyung sat on the floor with his head in his hands. "We don't have management," We don't have a lawyer. We don't even have a statement. We look like we just ran off a cliff. Jimin pulled a worn hoodie over his head. We didn't run. We walked, with both eyes open. Still, Taehyung said, we need a plan. Jungkook stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the sky. Let them come. Jimin looked up. What? Let the lawsuits come. Let the press try to bury us. We'll tell our story anyway. And who's going to publish it? Taehyung asked. They own everything. No, Jungkook said. Not everything. He opened his phone and made a call. To someone no one expected. Yoongi. The line rang 3 times. Then a groggy voice answered. You finally called. Jungkook's voice softened. We need help. There was silence. Then, I'm listening. The pieces began to move. Within 48 hours, they were meeting in a dim-lit basement 2 blocks from Hongdae. Yoongi, Namjoon, Jungkook, Jimin, and Taehyung.
No cameras. No stylists.
Just shadows, bruised pride, and old wounds. Namjoon spoke first. You realize what you've done? Jungkook nodded. We were dying. Quietly. Every day. We just chose to scream instead. Yoongi leaned back, rubbing his jaw. So what now? Jimin spoke without hesitation. We rebuild. Not as idols. As artists. As people. Namjoon sighed. You think they'll let you? No, Taehyung said. That's why we're asking you to stand with us. Yoongi stared at them for a long time. I've spent years trying to protect what we made. But maybe protecting it means breaking it now. And just like that, the underground began to rise. Under the dim amber lights of the Hongdae basement, the air was thick with smoke, coffee, and a silence that spoke louder than any fan chant ever had. Jungkook sat at the center of the room, legs crossed on the floor, his knuckles white from gripping a pencil. A notebook lay in front of him, blank, just like the future they were now responsible for building from scratch. Namjoon leaned against the wall with his arms folded. He looked older than before, not tired exactly, just heavy, as if he were carrying the weight of everything they'd once promised to become. Yoongi sat behind a small MIDI controller, eyes unfocused, tapping chords he wasn't even consciously playing. The silence wasn't empty, it was loaded. Jimin, still wearing the same hoodie from 2 days ago, stared at the blank page in front of him like it had insulted his entire family. He hadn't written a line in months. He'd written confessions, apologies, statements, but not lyrics. Not music. Not until now. Taehyung paced back and forth like a storm in a bottle. Jungkook finally spoke. We start with one song.
No filters. No edits. No corrections.
Yoongi looked up. That'll get leaked in a day. Let it, Jungkook said. Namjoon exhaled slowly. You really want to burn the bridge this cleanly? Jimin's voice was hoarse. We already burned it. Might as well light the path forward with the flames. Taehyung sat down finally. So what's the first line? No one answered. Then Yoongi, fingers still dancing, played a minor progression that felt like rain on metal. And Jungkook, voice low, said aloud, I was golden when I shut up. Now I'm dangerous because I sing. Jimin looked up, eyes wide. Taehyung's hand froze on his thigh. That's the title, Yoongi said. The track was born. Over the next 72 hours they barely slept. Lyrics poured from places none of them had touched in years. Guilt became melody. Regret became harmony. Rage became rhythm. It was messy, loud, imperfect, but it was real. Yoongi produced it in an underground studio a friend owed him in Mapo.
No HYBE. No filters. No censors.
Just pure, unpolished emotion. They named it Unsigned. Not a single platform wanted it. So they leaked it themselves. An anonymous account posted the file on a subreddit known for deep cuts and unreleased demos. Within minutes, fans began dissecting it. By hour 2, the vocal tone was identified as Jungkook. By hour 5, a fan found a lyric match in an old VLive notebook Taehyung once showed on stream. By hour 12, ARMY had exploded. Some were furious. They called it betrayal. Others called it freedom. The song climbed underground charts without a label. It spread like a virus across Telegram channels, closed Discord servers, unlisted YouTube links. It hit 1 million unofficial plays in less than 2 days. But with fire came consequences. The fandom fractured deeper. Death threats poured in. Some accused Jungkook of abandoning BTS's legacy. Others begged him to release more. And then came the betrayal. An anonymous email was sent to every major Korean news outlet. Subject line: exclusive, HYB's former golden boy planning anti-label movement. Attached, photos from the basement sessions. Blurry, grainy, but damning. One of them showed Namjoon's face. Another caught Yoongi's lyrics sheet. There were messages too. Snippets of leaked DMs suggesting that a shadow album was in progress. HYB moved fast. The next morning, a press conference was announced. Not by the company, by Jeon. Caught everyone off guard. He stood at a podium alone, dressed in a simple black suit. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. He adjusted the mic and said, with no script, "I was told to read a prepared statement today. I'm not going to." Gasps echoed. He continued, "I served in the military thinking I was returning to the group I loved. What I've come back to is something I barely recognize. Not because of them, but because of what fame did to us. What the machine demanded." He paused. "I don't condone everything that's happened, but I understand it. And if you're going to crucify someone for choosing honesty over obedience, crucify me too." That line broke the internet. Army was in full war mode now. HYBE tried to do damage control, releasing new schedules, pre-filmed footage, merchandising drops. But the illusion was shattered. Back in the basement, the 6 of them sat in a circle. This time, Jeon was there too. He looked at Jungkook and smiled. "You really torched the place, huh?" Jungkook's throat was tight. "I thought you'd be angry." "I am," Jeon said. "But I'm prouder than I am pissed." Jimin reached over and gripped his hand. Taehyung broke the silence. "What do we do now?" Yoongi answered first. "We finish the album." Namjoon nodded. "Then we take it on the road." Jeon raised an eyebrow. "A tour?" "Not a tour," Jungkook said. "A resurrection." Jimin looked skeptical. "And what do we call this band that doesn't exist on paper anymore?" Jungkook smiled, for the first time in days. "We don't need a name, just the truth."
Dalam bahasa Inggris tanpa menggunakan poin-poin.
ChatGPT said, under the thick, humming air of a forgotten warehouse on the outskirts of Busan. They stood in a circle as old audio equipment buzzed to life around them. Rusted scaffolding creaked under the weight of a last-minute lighting rig. The floor was cracked concrete. The walls still bore graffiti from a rave that had taken place years before. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't clean. But it was real, and for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, that was enough. The underground show wasn't advertised. It was whispered. 1 tweet. 3 emojis. A locked location. A leak just plausible enough to be intentional. Within 12 hours, hundreds of fans began trickling into the Port District. Hooded, masked, watching. By nightfall, the lot outside the warehouse was full. No security. No press. Just silence, nervous energy, and the unmistakable pulse of something sacred rising from the ruins of the old world. Inside, Jungkook stood backstage with his heart in his throat. His in-ear monitors weren't syncing. His mic was loose. The cables were old. But none of it mattered. Jimin walked up beside him, holding a bottle of water that was more for habit than thirst. "You okay?" "No," Jungkook said. "But it's the right kind of not okay." Jeon leaned over from behind a stack of amps. "You sure you don't want to run it through a safer platform?" Taehyung answered for him. "The whole point is no filter." Yoongi adjusted the dials on his equipment. "If this goes wrong, it'll go wrong very publicly." Namjoon chuckled, tension in every breath. "Then let's go down swinging." Outside, fans pressed closer to the makeshift stage. They had no idea what they were about to see. They only knew they were part of something forbidden. The lights flickered, then dimmed. A hush fell, and then the music hit. The first chord of Unsign rang out like a declaration of war. Jungkook stepped into the light. The crowd didn't scream at first. They froze. The disbelief was electric. Then it erupted. No LED screens. No pre-recorded VCRs.
No backup dancers.
Just one man. One voice. Raw. Unfiltered. Dangerous. He sang like a man with nothing to lose. By the third verse, Jimin had joined him. Taehyung followed. Yoongi behind the keys. Namjoon with a mic Jeon at the back, harmonizing like he had never left. For the first time in years, it wasn't about charts or endorsements. It was about survival. It was about truth. They played 6 songs that night. Half-written, unpolished, scarred by emotion. Some fans cried. Some stood in stunned silence. One collapsed in tears. But everyone knew. This was no comeback. This was resurrection. Then came the gunshot. It wasn't literal. But it might as well have been. In the middle of the final track, just as the chorus swelled, an old LED billboard at the back of the warehouse flickered to life. Hacked. A video played. From someone inside. A face blurred. A voice modulated. But the message was unmistakable. This is your idol. This is your rebellion. This is your lie. Played footage. Private studio conversations. Leaked chats. Out-of-context edits. Moments meant for no one. And then it hit. A clip of Jungkook. Angry. Isolated. Saying words no one was meant to hear. I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. Not Taehyung. Not Jimin. Maybe I never truly trusted any of them. The crowd recoiled. Jungkook froze. Jimin's face went pale. Taehyung stepped back like he'd been struck. The music died. The warehouse turned into chaos. People shouted. Some left. Others recorded everything. Jungkook tore off his mic and rushed off stage. Behind the curtains, he sank to the floor. Jimin followed, shaking. What was that? When did you say that? I don't. Jungkook swallowed, panic rising. I don't know. It was old. Months ago. Maybe during the studio fallout. You said you forgave us. Taehyung whispered, eyes wide. I meant it. But you did say it. Jungkook couldn't breathe. I was alone. Angry. I didn't. Namjoon entered. Phone in hand. It's spreading already. Twitter. TikTok. YouTube. Someone from inside did this, Jeon said grimly. Someone with access. Yoongi's face was ice. Bang. No, Jimin said suddenly. It's not just him. This wasn't just revenge. They turned to him. I recognize the timestamp, Jimin said, voice low. That was the night after. I told him about the song credits. Taehyung exhaled sharply. The worst night. Jungkook pressed his palms against his temples. I messed this up. No, Namjoon said. They want you to think that. That's the trap. Taehyung looked at the others. We can fix this. Not with another live. Not with a PR statement. Then how? Jeon asked. With another show, Taehyung said. But this time, uncut. Yoongi stared at him. A Doku performance? Jimin's eyes lit up. Live. Raw. Cut between truth and stage. Behind the lyrics. Behind the breakdowns. Dangerous, Jeon muttered. But brilliant. Namjoon nodded slowly. We release everything. Not just the songs. The fights. The process. The pain. The betrayal. All of it. Taehyung turned to Jungkook. Do you trust us now? Jungkook looked at them, each one of them. Seeing not idols, not former members, but the brothers he once built dreams with.
Ido.
And in that moment, what HYBE tried to weaponize became the very thing that would destroy them. Truth.